Our newscast tonight, President Park Geun-hye sits down for talks with leaders of rival political parties. Core discussion topics, reforms, history textbooks, and family reunions. On the last day of the first round of family reunion for war-torn families, participants bid tearful farewells, possibly for the last time in their lives. Shocking dips in net profits of Korea's biggest conglomerates, Hyundai Motor and Samsung Engineering, sound alarms for companies in related fields. All in this edition of Primetime News. It's 10 p.m. on a Thursday here in Korea. Thank you for joining us for Primetime News. I'm Daniel Choy. Let's start with a rare meeting between President Park Geun-hye and the leaders of Korea's rival political parties. All pending issues, including the dispute on state history textbooks, were put on the table. Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
The clash point at Thursday's talks was the government's push to reintroduce state-issued history textbooks.
President Park and other participants of the meeting agreed on the need for correct history education, but showed a difference of opinion regarding government authorization.
It was the first meeting in 7 months for President Park and the leaders from the two rival political parties. The government wants state history textbooks for secondary schools to eliminate left-leaning content in existing books. On the other hand, the opposition party claims this is an attempt to beautify pro-Japan activities during the colonial era and the military dictatorships decades ago.
President Park expressed disappointment that efforts for a correct history textbook have turned into a political issue and stressed the need for a correct and proud history textbook for the sake of national unity.
President Park's other agenda items included ratifying Korea's free trade agreements with China, Vietnam, and New Zealand, passing key bills related to labor reform, economic revitalization, and next year's budget, as well as inter-Korean affairs. She said Korea's trade deal with China must come into effect within this year, as a day's delay is too costly for Korean exporters. Addressing the reunions for war-separated families, President Park said the event should be held on a regular basis and vowed to expand humanitarian exchanges between the two Koreas. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And after that meeting, Korea's rival parties, as usual, came up with opposite evaluations about the talks. Ruling Saenuri Party welcomed the presidential office's efforts to better communicate with the parliament and the public, while the main opposition, NPAD, said only insurmountable differences were confirmed. Park Ji-won tells us more.
The ruling Saenuri Party evaluated Thursday's talks with the president and the opposition side quite positively. The Conservative Party's floor leader Won Yu-chul said, although the two parties couldn't agree on the most heated topic of government-led history textbooks, the talks provided an opportunity to both the presidential office and the parliament to bridge the gap in some of issues. Won said particularly issues like the necessity to ratify the currently pending Korea-China FTA deal and a bill aiming to globalize Korea's medical industry earned bipartisan understanding.
The talks held another big significance that the president had a chance to listen to the main opposition party's voice carefully. I'd like to highly evaluate that the president heard public voice through the opposition party.
However, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party's leader Moon Jae-in expressed frustration after the talks. Speaking to reporters at the assembly, Moon said only insurmountable differences were confirmed. He added that the difference in perceptions on the history textbook issue is too deep to be understood.
As historical perceptions held by President Park and ruling party leader Kim Moo-sung were so distant from common sense, I felt hopeless, just like facing a colossal cliff.
Moon said the only area that his party, the president, and the ruling Saenuri Party all agreed upon was the need to create more jobs for the nation's youth. The NPAD's leader conveyed his regret to the public, saying his party couldn't bring out the results it anticipated from Thursday's talks. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Let's now turn to the public's perspective on the matter. The results of the third public survey on President Park's decision for a state-authorized history textbooks are out. In contrast to last week's poll, more are voicing their opposition to the change. Lee Ji-won looks into the numbers.
A recent public survey showed that about 53% of respondents are against and 40% are in favor of the state-authorized history textbook. According to pollster Real Meter, its third survey on the government's decision to publish a single history textbook showed 8 percentage points increase against such change from last week, while there was only a 6% increase of those in favor. The percentage of people who weren't sure remained the same at 7.7%. Regions such as Daegu and Busan, traditional strongholds of President Park, also showed an increase of people against government-issued textbooks. Nevertheless, Gyeongsangbuk-do and Chungcheong-do province still showed their support for President Park, with up to 58% of respondents agreeing to the textbook change. The capitals Seoul, Gyeonggi-do province, and Incheon reconfirmed their opposing stance, with more than 60% answering against. As such, many groups showed their discontent towards the government's decision in their own ways on Wednesday. History professors at Seoul National University said in a press conference that they will not participate in any kind of work if the government chooses to enforce the government-led history textbook. On the other hand, the Korean Disabled Veterans Association and Patriotic Organizations Council, a conservative civic group, organized a mass campaign at Seoul City Hall Plaza on correcting left-leaning history textbooks, where Saenuri Party's leader Kim Moo-sung gave an opening remark. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Turning now to the last day of inter-Korean reunions at the Mount Kumgang Resort in North Korea. The first group of war-separated families has said their goodbyes on the third and final day of the first stage of the reunion event. For a vivid recap of this emotionally charged day, we turn to our Connie Kim.
It's yet another heartbreaking goodbye. Eyes are filled with tears and hands are tightly held as families hold on to their final moments before being separated again, possibly forever.
이제 바라는 게 그밖에 더 있어요. 또 만나고 또 만나고 또 만나고 그밖에 없다고 누나하고는 더 이상 말할 것도 없잖아.
This is probably the last time Lee Jong-suk will see her father. She whispers something she's always had in her heart, but has been unable to say for so long. For everyone, it's a dream come true, but one that was far too short. It's an emotional time, a time they will remember forever. Afraid of not being able to say everything on the last day, one man had written his father a letter several pages long.
정말 고맙다. 할아버지 계시면서 할아버지 오시죠. 힘을 얻어서 더욱 동네도 앞당기고 어머니 잘 돌보고 그래서 그날 더욱이 동행된다. 다시 만나세요.
In their final session, family pictures were taken for the first time in more than 60 years. Family trees were reconstructed, and some families exchanged promise rings as mementos of their time together. For these families, every minute must have felt like a second, and all too soon, an announcement tells them the time they've been wanting to avoid has finally come.
아쉽지만 10분 후에 작별 상봉을 마칠 예정입니다.
On the buses ready to depart, the families reach out for one another, trying to hold on until the last possible moment.
건강해야 돼. 승리 될 때까지 계셔야 돼. 알았죠? 사랑해. 하여튼 건강하세요. 네, 그래야 또 만날 수 있으니까 건강하셔야 돼요.
As they say their last goodbyes, there are cries of sorrow as the families don't know when or if this will be their last embrace. As the buses move away, it's too hard to bear for many, and some are unable to speak. So far, 19,000 Koreans have been reunited with one another, but given the timing, it's estimated that the majority of separated family members will have passed away within the next 25 years. So for everyone to be reunited with their loved ones, at least 6,000 people must meet every year. That's led to growing calls for the reunions to be held on a regular basis beyond the politics of the two Koreas. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Taking a look at the latest corporate earnings reports for Korea, Hyundai Motor disappointed by falling slightly under market expectations. But the real shocker was Samsung Engineering's digits as its operating profit and net loss turned to the red. Kim Min-ji gives us the details.
Report cards for the third quarter are out and they don't seem rosy. Korea's top automaker Hyundai Motor saw its operating profit fall to a 5-year low in the July to September period. The automobile giant reported an operating income of $1.3 billion, falling almost 9% on year and slightly below market expectations. Its net profit also dipped more than 25%. The company attributed the losses to the weakness of currencies in emerging markets and the euro, which canceled out the rise in the value of the Korean won against the US dollar. It also cited increased sales costs amid competition from foreign rivals.
The losses come due to fluctuations in foreign exchange rates, but things will get better in the fourth quarter on the back of new releases. Conditions in emerging markets haven't been on the good side, but we doubt it will worsen. Also, we expect auto sales in China to improve.
Staying on the earnings front, things were even better in the construction sector. Samsung Engineering posted an operating loss of $1.3 billion in the third quarter. Sales tumbled more than 60% and it recorded a net loss of $1.1 billion. The company cited delays on projects in the Middle East as one of the main reasons for the losses. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Shipments of TV panels are on the rise despite uncertainties in the global television market. According to Taiwanese display market watcher Witt's View, the combined volume of TV panel shipments by the world's top suppliers topped 182 million units in the first 3 quarters of the year. Experts predict that figure will surpass 242 million by the end of the year, a 7.6% rise from the year before. Korea's LG Display took the top spot in panel shipments, followed by Taiwan's Innolux and Samsung Display. Witt's View attributes the rise in shipments to recovering demand from TV manufacturers. Samsung Group Chair Lee Geun-hye is giving away 20 billion won or $17.5 million of his personal assets to young Koreans. According to Samsung Group on Thursday, the chairman and top executives of group affiliates, including Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong, will donate roughly $4.3 million to the Youth Hope Fund. The government-launched foundation is dedicated to creating jobs for young Koreans with the goal of tackling the country's youth unemployment rate. The donation comes as the bedridden entrepreneur had been emphasizing the importance of cultivating young talent. With the contribution, the foundation has collected over $30 million since it was launched in mid-September. Many senior citizens in Seoul live in poverty partly because they are unsuccessful at landing jobs. Lee Soo-hoon shows us how a special event held at an unconventional location in central Seoul could help them improve their chances of finding what they're looking for.
It's a beautiful autumn day here at Chogesa in central Seoul, which is filled with the scent of these colorful flowers. But it's no ordinary day for the Buddhist temple, which today is hosting a job fair. At this biannual event, co-hosted by Chogesa Temple and Jongno-gu District Office, participants were able to have an interview and get free headshots for their resumes. There was also another bonus, job counseling from one of the monks at the temple.
Chogesa is a comfortable space open 24 hours for the people of Seoul. Anyone can easily stop by for employment advice.
Because it's such an open event, and Jongno-gu is the district with the highest proportion of senior citizens in the city, most of the participants at today's fair were older job seekers.
I have to work, even if it's just a little. I have the strength, so I'm here to get advice on searching for a job.
In Korea, 47% of the elderly population lives in poverty, and that's 4 times the OECD average.
Elderly poverty is a national problem that a small regional office can't solve alone. But if we can find work for even one more elderly person, it will make a difference.
As Korea's senior citizens struggle to make a living, more open job fairs like today's could help them gain the knowledge they need to make the most of their search efforts and maybe even land a job. Lee Soo-in, Arirang News.
Japan's exercise in futility continues, but no matter how hard Tokyo tries to cover up its wartime atrocities, mounting international pressure and evidence of their actions are making it harder for the country to deny the facts. Kim Ji-yeon highlights why time and the world is against them in matters pertaining to history.
International pressure is mounting against Japan for it to truly acknowledge its past wartime atrocities during World War II. A former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights pointed to the coercive nature of Japan's sexual enslavement of women during the war as a case in point. At the 16th World Knowledge Forum in Seoul Thursday, Navi Pillay said they should be honored as prisoners of war since they were forcibly transported by the aggressor. And given the practice of international trials for such sexual violations, she added Japan's argument that there was consent on the part of the perpetrated is insignificant since the act of sexual enslavement itself is coercive in nature. More than 200,000 women, mainly for Korea and China, are believed to have been forced to serve as sex slaves for Japanese troops during World War II, and those who survived are still waiting for an apology from Japan. Meanwhile, another revelation was reported by the New York Times Thursday regarding Japan's biological warfare in Manchuria during the same period. The medical atrocities committed by Japanese Army Unit 731 were also outlined at the Museum of War Crime Evidence in Harbin, China. Their details emerge of thousands of men, women, and children being deliberately infected with plague microbes to study their effects. This among many other gruesome experiments, including intentional frostbites and transfusions of horse blood into human bodies. Despite the detailed reports, those responsible for such brutality were left unpunished, as opposed to Nazi doctors who committed similar acts but were eventually prosecuted by wartime tribunals. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Moving on, Korea is the world's 5th largest nuclear energy powerhouse, and it's becoming increasingly dependent on atomic energy. But that has also raised safety concerns with growing calls for greater cooperation on the regional front. Kwon So-ah turns to viewpoints of ordinary citizens as well as experts in the field on the matter.
How do Koreans feel about nuclear energy and the safety of the country's reactors?
Nothing has happened so far. I feel safe.
I'm not that interested in the issue. I believe the country deals with it safely.
I feel a bit uneasy. I've read about the frequent malfunctions at nuclear reactors in a lot of articles.
I'm worried because of the accident in Japan. Korea has enough nuclear reactors, and I don't think we need more.
The public is divided, but what can't be denied is that Korea is the 5th largest nuclear energy powerhouse in the world, and the country has more nuclear power plants in the works. The same goes for China.
The International Atomic Energy Agency predicts that the number of nuclear reactors in the world will have expanded by 60% by 2040 compared to 2013.
While Japan shut down all but one of its reactors after the Fukushima disaster, and many Western countries are shuttering plants as well, the demand for nuclear energy in Northeast Asia is growing, largely for economic and environmental reasons. That was the point emphasized at the International Forum on Northeast Asia Nuclear Safety Cooperation on Thursday, but also
more and more we need to push for better strengthening our international cooperation.
Accidents can happen, but the correct prevention and response to nuclear accidents is so critical that experts say simply sharing information on safety regulations is not enough. There has to be intervention too. A good example of this kind of intervention is how European countries began monitoring each other's nuclear plants after the Fukushima disaster.
Considering the geographical proximity of Korea, China and Japan, I think we should raise safety levels to a place where each country is confident about the others.
And that's what experts from the three countries are aiming for, saying there are no borders when it comes to nuclear safety. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And now it's time for international headlines. We have Bruce Harrison joining us from our news center. Bruce, what's going on around the world today?
Hello, Daniel. Well, some fresh tensions regarding the Middle East. World powers are asking the UN to take action against Iran for its recent missile test. They say it violated a UN resolution. Iran says, no, it didn't.
Right. The main concern is what the missiles are for. Iran says the weapon is for protecting its people for national defense and was not designed at all to carry a nuclear warhead.
Exactly. That's what Iran says. The U.S. and several allies, they say the missile's capable of delivering a nuclear weapon solely based on its design. They're calling the test a serious violation of a Security Council resolution that bans Iran from any activity related to ballistic missiles capable of carrying a nuke. Iran's foreign ministry said firmly the missile is not designed to do that.
So we can say that Iran's missile program aims to protect the sovereignty of the country and has no relation with the UN resolutions.
This was Iran's first missile test since it signed an historic nuclear deal this summer with the U.S., France, Britain, Germany, Russia, and China. The United States has made it clear the test is unrelated to the deal, which is aimed at preventing Iran from developing atomic weapons. A man entered a school in Sweden today and killed a teacher with what appeared to be a sword. The masked man wounded several others before he was shot by police. The suspect's now being treated at a hospital, and police say they don't know why he did it. The BBC reports the injured are 2 students and another teacher who's in surgery. According to witnesses, hundreds of students fled the building screaming. Prime Minister Stefan Löfven is expected to arrive there sometime Thursday. He said everyone, the victims, students, staff, and community, must receive the support they need. He called the attack a black day for Sweden. The Philippines is handing over to China 2 suspects in the shooting of a Chinese diplomats at a restaurant. The shooting happened during a birthday lunch in the city of Cebu. Police say the husband of a Chinese woman working at the consulate in Cebu shot and killed the deputy consul general and a senior staff member. China said an investigation's underway.
We are deeply distressed that this kind of incident has taken place. The situation and reasons are under investigation so that it can be understood better.
The consul general was also wounded in the shooting. Police are holding the suspect's wife for questioning as well. It's unclear if the couple plotted together. For now, both have requested diplomatic immunity. And that's a glimpse of the world. Have a great night.
Fine dust levels have gone back to normal in Seoul with the ultra-fine dust advisory lifted early this morning. But in the meantime, people in Jeollado province had a very smoggy day with the concentration of fine particles remaining at about 160 microgram per cubic meter, and that's about 4 times higher than usual. And alerts remain in place for some parts, including Gwangju. And despite the improvements in some parts of the country compared to the past few days, toxic smog from China still persists and will continue to affect the country till early next week before rain falls next Tuesday in the central parts of the country. And that rain will also bring down the highs to the seasonal averages. And speaking of which, tomorrow will be slightly cooler than today under partly sunny skies. So let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. Daily high here in Seoul will hike up to 21, while Daegu and Busan top out at 23. 23, and Gwangju will climb to 24. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 23 and 22, while Dokdo rises to 17. And the weather outlook in Sokcho, where selected families are getting ready for the second inter-Korean family reunions, looks to be a breezy day under partly sunny skies. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
We've come to the end of this edition of Primetime News. Thank you for watching, and wherever you may be, depending on your time zone, have a good day or a good night.